From Buffalo, Toronto Public Media, and WBFO, this is What's Next, Producer's Picks, highlights of conversations heard on previous episodes. On today's show,
due to the intersection of the criminal legal system and public health, a lot of people haven't been able to understand or even examine what that looks like, especially when it comes to children.
Near East and West Side Task Force members Francesca Mesiah and Dior Lindsey. And we close out with
academics was always number one in my house. So I'm like, you're going to be a black woman, you're going to be a black educated woman. You are going to intimidate a lot of people. But I always taught her, you have every right to be in a room, just like everybody else.
Kissena Frazier, who founded the college access coaching company, Akcess Granted. I'm Dallas Taylor. Thanks for listening. First, we revisit Jay Moran's conversation with the Near East and West Side Task Force Executive Director Francesca Mesiah. The two are joined by Dior Lindsey, another member, to discuss the history and future of the task force, which began in 2006 to promote the well-being and self-sufficiency of racial and ethnic communities in Buffalo.
A pleasure for sure. And Francesca, let's talk a little bit. Let's just maybe get into a general conversation, because this organization has a lot of, I don't want to say moving parts, but it's a big organization that always seems to be changing with the needs of the community, the Near East and West Side Task Force. Why don't you give us an overview?
Yes, well, the Near East and West Side Task Force began in 2001 with the East Side Task Force, which was a part of the Black Leadership Forum, which met at Gethsemane Baptist Church under Reverend Reed. And in 2001, for those of you who can remember, that was a time of the .22 caliber killer. And not only did the group of leaders who met within the Black Leadership Forum begin addressing that, they also began to looking at the needs of the health conditions, or the lack of health, of the needs of the health conditions on the East Side,
right,
but the lack of services. And no one person really, no champion coming to say all the different health disparities. So then that's where the East Side Task Force came from, and they met at Deaconess Hospital, which then was just Deaconess Hospital, but now matter of fact, Deaconess Hospital is now High Point, which is part of Kaleida Health,
right,
which is where I work, Kaleida Health, and so that's how the East Side Task Force began working closely with Kaleida Health. However, we're a collaboration of organizations.
Right.
So at that time, there was a gentleman who worked for Kaleida Health, Andres Garcia, who was also a member of the Western New York Friends and Families Hispanic Civic Association, and that formed in 2003. So many members of the task force were also members of the Hispanic organization. So it was in 2006, through a lot of conversation, that the organizations came together, because people were going to this, meetings for the East Side and the West Side.
Right.
The health conditions were the same, education conditions were the same or similar. And then we had a meeting, and around that time, 2006, is when I became executive director, because I was at that time with Kaleida Health, and I'm still with Kaleida Health. And that's when we came up with the name Near East and West Side Task Force, because the work that we do in the areas of health and education are focused on the East Side, Lower East, the Near East Side, as well as the Lower West Side, which then was primarily a Latino community, and now we know it's immigrants and
right.
Latino.
Huge mixed community, yeah, for sure. Now, it's interesting, though, because Kaleida, in essence, supports you to do
Yes.
this work with the task force. I know the interest, of course, is in improving outcomes, but at the same time, maybe just expand on why is Kaleida Health so invested in making sure that there's somebody there making sure this organization runs?
Well, because Kaleida Health is concerned about the community, has always been concerned about the community. And when the task force first began, It was your major health insurance companies, all of your hospitals, ECMC, the Catholics. It was colleges and universities. And I believe, I've never asked them, but I believe they saw something that worked when everyone came together, focusing on specific communities, focusing
Right.
on the East Side and Gethsemane Baptist Church is in the Fruit Belt. Said this works. This is working. So there was no need to, break what was working.
Gotcha.
And Kaleida Health is very supportive, remains supportive of the Near East and West Side Task Force, and they've been a member all of these years.
Dior Lindsey, let's talk just a little bit more about your role here and also with Family Works Buffalo.
Sure.
Let's talk about Family Works Buffalo first and foremost, just to give us an outline of what that's about.
Yeah, sure. So Family Works Buffalo is a program of the Osborne Association. And in Buffalo, we work primarily with children and families affected by a loved one's incarceration in Western New York, especially if the incarceration is of a parent. So we support children and families that have been affected by this, but Osborne as a whole is a New York City-based agency that's been around for almost 100 years. And the rest of our 4 sites, Bronx, Brooklyn, Harlem, and Newburgh, really Osborne does things from arrest to reentry and children, youth, and family services, and has done so for years.
And talk about how now that merges or comes into connection then with the Near East and West Side Task Force in terms of, obviously you guys are a member, you're a board member, but you're also, the organization is a member of this task force as well. Talk about that connection.
Yeah, sure. So Family Works Buffalo opened in 2019, in September of 2019 in particular. And during that time is when I met Fran. And I learned about the Near East and West Side Task Force and the significant community impact that it has. And due to the intersection of the criminal legal system and public health, a lot of people haven't been able to understand or even examine what that looks like, especially when it comes to children. So when we became members of the Near East and West Side Task Force, it was, a perfect connection to have. I know one of my colleagues, Wayne, was on the show not too long ago, and he brought up, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And that study that was done talks about the long-term health impacts that children can experience, when they're exposed to different adverse events. And parental incarceration is one of the top adverse childhood experiences. If I'm not mistaken, it's the 4th most common. And to think about ACEs from a public health standpoint, it was, just so essential to be a part of the work that, the Near East and West Side Task Force has been doing. And we've been members since and doing wonderful outreach. And, we've been able to get connected to so many wonderful organizations as well as people during our time. And I think, the Near East and West Side Task Force does wonderful work.
I'm looking forward to a little later in the program getting a little deeper into that issue that Family Works Buffalo gets into. But I want to stick with the task force for just a little bit because and Dior just mentioned it, outreach. It really is the essence of the task force.
It is, but a little before that, even in 2001, the task force did studies looking at health disparities, life expectancies of African Americans versus white. Looking why are the life expectancies shorter? Why, and this is in 2001. Why is infant mortality? Why are African American moms dying in birth? Why are the babies dying? So an organization, we're talking about outreach, getting into outreach, such as Buffalo Pre and Perinatal, have always been a part of the Near East and West Side Task Force. We're small, but we're mighty.
I like the way that
You know,
sounds.
this is the first executive director was Dr. Juanita Hunter, who is a nurse, and she's still around here in Buffalo. Then it was Barbara Franklin, and I'm the third executive director. And so, and in terms of outreach, we partner. That we talk about the collaboration. So through conversations, through our meetings, that's where we find out, the need in the Broadway film work community at Matt Urban. You know, we've been to Matt Urban. We haven't been there recently, but we've been to Matt Urban. We've been to the Bell Center. We've been to the West Side Community Center. We've been to Johnny B. Wiley. You know, the Broadway Market. We've also been part of outside activities with a woman named Mrs. Triggs, who was outside,
Mrs. Triggs.
Mrs. Triggs.
Sycamore, right?
Sycamore.
Yeah.
But she does outreach, even including in Black Rock. But once we hear of the need, and Buffalo Municipal Housing been working closely with BMHA in terms of providing services, bringing the services, because we know. And when you're living in, they call it health disparities, I call it life disparities.
Right.
When you're living in conditions where you're on it, you don't have a car, the bus system is slower. You have children at home. You may have loved ones at home. You can't go that far. It's much easier if you can get your health insurance, receive a health screening, find out information on how to work with your information and working with a child whose parent is in prison, incarcerated. It's much easier to take your, maybe push your loved one in a wheelchair, take that baby in a stroller. It's much easier if you can just have to walk a few blocks
Somewhere in your neighborhood.
to your community center.
Right.
And we work year round.
And like you said, you're out doing the outreach and you're seeing these things. What are you learning about the people of Buffalo? What are you seeing?
One of the things I will say that people are more open about their health.
That's good news.
Yes, and I'll say especially with diabetes.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just use that as an example.
And a significant one.
Significant, because working with Collida, the resources, I always am able to have diabetes information or stroke information. People are now having conversations. Can I get that information on low blood sugar, high blood sugar? Can I get that information again on, how to prepare my plate? And by the way, do you have information on a primary care physician? Because we work with general physicians. So, we need information on primary care physicians, and also the Community Health Center of Buffalo, which is where Dior's office is housed, working along with Levon and Sari. For years, we've worked along with her in terms of, because they have dental. And so people are now more open and more comfortable. Because I think there are more health organizations working with health disparities, such as a Buffalo Health Equity.
So overall, though, since your time there and before, and you have a great experience in Buffalo, do you see that these outreach efforts are making people more comfortable with coming up and really exploring the information that you are offering?
They are, and I do surveys. So after each outreach, there is an evaluation, right?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I didn't get your evaluation. So each organization turns in an evaluation, and so it's not me saying how it's working.
Okay.
It's the organization. It's also how many people has Independent Health, has Univera, has Highmark. How many people have they enrolled through the outreach? So that's what keeps people coming back and being members, because we're able to track.
Well, Dior, I assume you
Yes.
smiled and started laughing there, so you know about the survey. So tell us maybe about the survey. Tell us maybe what some of the input that you've offered.
Yeah, we track, how many people came to our table.
Okay.
What are some of those conversations that are being had? What are some of the resources that are being offered to the families or any of the individuals that have, come to your table and inquired, about the resources. And I mean, we do our own internally, but that's why I chuckle, because I was like, yeah, we do every single event. And I think it's important for us to, take a moment to recognize that, these numbers, reflect the number of instances that we have opportunities to really make a significant impact in someone's life by offering them resources that they didn't know existed or didn't think could have been so important to them. I mean, I can only, speak for, my experiences
Please do, yeah.
particularly, but I can tell you how many times folks have come to our table and said, I wish these resources were available when I was a kid. Or, I had no idea that, video visiting was something that was local that I could do with my loved ones that are incarcerated. Or, oftentimes that stigma piece is also there. Like, oh, I don't need that, or, thank goodness I don't need that, which absolutely, but for the folks that do, statistically 1 out of 2 people do. And with that frequency, just having the opportunity to really provide information is just essential. And I think the Near East and West Side Task Force does an amazing job with that.
And so to outreach, let's say for Dior, I may have next to the table, because sometimes I am strategic when I place people next to each other. Next to it, I may have Juville with the student pharmacist.
Okay.
And that way, people, because a lot of times when you're in the community, you really don't know, you don't understand the medication you're taking. You don't know why you really should take your high blood pressure medicine every day, even though hypertension is tied in with heart disease and stroke. You really don't know. So then, one of our board members, Lynn, Dr. Rivers, she will have some of her students. We've had physical therapy students. We've had pharmacy students. Working with another member, we've had nursing students who are able to take blood pressure. I've seen people go home, again, because it's close, get their medicine, come back, speak with the pharmacy student, and ask them about their medication. But then, of course, there's someone who's over the students. I've seen people with physical therapy do I forgot what the test is called, it's walking, but again, it's testing your gait. And again, making people aware of the services that are through Juville College, because, again, Juville has been a member of the task force for many years. I'm of the belief that health and education go hand in hand, and you can't separate them.
What about the comfort level for somebody who comes to one of your events? Let's talk about that. What that's like.
The comfort level, even when you can't speak English.
Smiles, which is becoming more and more significant.
Smiles go a long way.
Yeah.
Smiles go, and communication, and when you point, because many times there could be somebody with them who does speak a little English, and working along with Urban League and Project Hope, they have outreach people that speak 6 different languages. So sometimes I can just go over to Project Hope and ask, does someone speak Bengali? Does someone speak one of the languages? They'll walk around with them.
Okay.
When we have outreach at BMHA, there's someone that speaks Spanish. One of our board members, Esmeralda, speaks Spanish. So when someone really does not speak the language, again, that's also making sure that people are around who are able to speak the language, who then are able to walk around with the individual for that comfort level versus saying sorry.
Right.
I don't like that word, sorry.
Doesn't sound like something you accept.
No.
What about the trust factor? There's always, we hear about that a little bit when it comes to people in the community may not trust or don't feel comfortable approaching certain elements. What about that? Is that something that you're aware of, or is it something that you see as generally not an issue for you?
Most of our members are all in their role. If it's a health or education, they're all in the outreach area.
Okay.
So they're used to being out in the community. They're out. I'll never forget observing one of our members one time. My gosh, she was just so quiet. But when someone from the community, one of the customers, came up to her, she just opened up. And I said, that's her style. Everyone has a different style for comfort. And, and when I know for our behavioral health, when I know we have a behavioral health organization, if it's crisis services, if it's Urban League Project Hope, I put them in the corner. I'll make sure that that's a corner table. So then they can have a chair on the corner and there's no one next to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they can have a more of a private conversation, because many times it's the beginning conversation that will lead to that's part of a phone conversation later on in detail. But for behavioral health, they're in the corner. Like they wouldn't be in the middle in between, UB research and let's say and Osborne. They would not be between those two. They're privacy, because I recognize that.
Dior, I want to get into a little bit more about what Family Works Buffalo does. Just a little bit, take some time here, because as Fran mentioned, how often people are surprised to know that there is an opportunity here for loved ones of people who are incarcerated to connect better, to find opportunities. Talk about what is available through Family Works Buffalo.
Yeah, so so locally, our services are video visiting. That's one of them. So families can come to our office, which is located in the Community Health Center, Buffalo, 34 Benwood Avenue, which once again talks about that intersectionality of the criminal legal system and public health. But families can come to our office for free once a month, up to 4 family members, and they can visit with an incarcerated loved one for 11 different New York State correctional facilities. And the room is set up kind of like a living room with a whole bunch of toys, books, and games. It's very well lit, therapeutic, and families are able to take that time to bond at no cost. And of course, it's never meant to replace anything in person.
No.
Because you can't replicate a hug virtually.
Right.
But families are able to have that opportunity to bond. And during the higher points of COVID, when in-person visiting opportunities weren't available, we had over 100 video visits in less than a year just at our site alone. So it's one of our more popular services locally that we have in our program, as well as we have 2 youth groups, one for kids 12 to 15, another for kids 15 to 19 that have also had this experience of having a loved one incarcerated or recently released, and it's our once-a-week support group. They do them in New York City. We really just brought it here and offered that opportunity. So we have over 20 kids in our group right now, and they do really fun workshops, very educational workshops.
Do you find the kids bonding together?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. And relationship building and building social support and really maximizing those opportunities to build resilience is really just everything that we do through a lot of our work.
Something you mentioned to me before we were on the air, and this caught me off guard. Well, a lot of things catch me off guard, but this one particular fact, when it comes to maximum security for women in New York State, the closest facility is where?
Yeah, Bedford Hills is 6.5 hours away from Buffalo. And for our video visiting program, we're in all of the women's correctional facilities, which is Bedford, Taconic, and Albion. And if you have a loved one that's at Bedford, you're, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of finances are going to have to be put into actually visiting that loved one in person, which we always encourage in person. But Bedford Hills is one of our more popular sites just in Buffalo alone, just because of the time and the distance it takes to actually visit.
What's it like for these kids when they're on these video calls or just in general conversation that you might have with them? What's their experience?
Oh, I could take up a whole episode just talking about that.
We may be inviting you back.
But yeah, I have had instances where I've had kids just bring their, sign saying, "Dad, I'm graduating from high school. I'm doing that one thing that you said that you wanted to make sure that I'm doing. Because you never got a chance to do it, right? I've seen instances where, parents are parenting their kids in the video visiting room. Hey, I was at the parent-teacher conference. I heard X, Y, and Z. What's going on? What do you need? I see kids light up, having that opportunity to see mom or dad in that room. Whether or not they're playing Uno or, whatever games they may play, or whether or not they're reading a book together. I've just seen the opportunity for family bonding. And even just one instance, we also take in, kids that are also in foster care that have a loved one. So I've had foster care parents. I've had the mom, the caseworker, and the child visit with mom, and it made her reentry and reunion with the child so much easier. So just offering the opportunity for support has just been, it's one of the joys of our program that I really love talking about.
That was Jay Moran with Francesca Mesiah and Dior Lindsey of the Near East and West Side Task Force. And we close today's show with Angelea Preston in conversation with Kissena Frazier, whose company Akcess Granted helps underrepresented and marginalized communities through the college enrollment process.
Thank you so much, Angelea, for having me.
First, how are you? How are you doing?
I am doing well. The sun is shining, so I'm happy about that. Sun always makes me happy. I always say any day above ground is a great day.
Let's talk about Akcess Granted.
Yes.
What is Akcess Granted?
So Akcess Granted basically is college access consulting, unlocking your full potential with the education as key. So what I do, I serve underserved and marginalized student populations just to help them not only get to college, but get through college and whatever that looks like for them. It can be a certificate program, 4-year degree, if they want to get a master's, even go as far as a doctorate degree.
What made you want to start Akcess Granted?
It was a lot of different things. So I'm a master's level social worker. So I have a master's in social work. My why, I always say, is because no one was there for me when it was time for me to navigate the process of college, right? When I was in high school, a guidance counselor really didn't provide that much guidance per se. I was accepted into an HEOP program because I am a first-generation college student. So shout out to all the first-gen students.
Shout out, me too.
Yes. So I am a first-generation college student. I was accepted into this particular program because I'm first-gen, because I came from a single-family household. My grades were not really bad, but not like super great. And this particular program was for students like me. So I had all of those qualifying factors. However, it was never really explained to me properly when the guidance counselor, told me like, oh yeah, you got into this university and you have to go in the summertime. I completely shut down. Like, I don't want to go in the summertime. It was my first summer out of high school. And I'm like, I just want to work and just hang with my friends and be with my boyfriend and not like go to school, right? But she never really pitched it to me as this is why you were chosen. This will set you up for X, Y, and Z. You're going to get a head start. You're going to be able to, further academically excel by the time September comes. You'll have friends. You'll have, like all of these things, all of the benefits of the program should have been sold to me, and it was not. So now here I am. I do have 3 degrees now. Praise God. I was able to make it through, but I had to navigate that process by myself financially, doing the FAFSA, just kind of figuring it out, working, going to school. Then I became a mom. So I feel like if I would have had the knowledge that I'm giving students right now, if I would have had that or someone to impart that in me at an earlier age, who knows where I would be. So that is my why. I do this because no one did it for me. I also understand that the population of students that I serve, the under-marginalized, the underserved, they don't have the same access to higher ed as their affluent peers, right? They don't have parents who have been there before them. So many of them are the first, and being first is scary, as we all know, right? You have a lot of weight on your shoulders, maybe from your family, or you still have to work and you still have to provide, or you have someone telling you, you can't do it because I didn't do it. Or you might have dreams and aspirations and someone's shooting them down all the time because
Right.
they didn't achieve it. Then they're, just placing that doubt in your head. And then you have that negative self-talk that comes in. So I do what I do because I want all of the students who want to go to college or get a certificate or do something that no one else in their family has done. I am like their biggest cheerleader. I'm their advocate. I'm there to give them the tools, whatever they need to make sure that they're able just to be successful.
So you mentioned the guidance counselor that really didn't really provide any guidance for you.
Correct.
And I'm assuming you were 17 or 18
Correct.
when most kids, youth, teenagers are trying to figure out if they're going to go to college.
Right.
And I could only imagine, as I was once 17 and 18, that the amount of responsibility that is and how scary it can be for a youth, a teenager who doesn't have that guidance to try to figure it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and just to speak to what you're saying, like at 17 and 18, like it's super unrealistic now that we think about it for you to know what you want to be when you grow up, essentially, right? At 17 and 18, you're still finding yourself, you're still exploring. With Akcess Granted, I also do career exploration as well. Yes, I am a college access consultant. Yes, my workshops are around the tools that you need, but it's also exploring different careers as well. So yeah, like you said, at 17 and 18, they might I get Miss, I don't know. Miss, I don't know. Miss, I don't know. Okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's delve deep into it. So really just having these conversations with the students that they're not able to have with probably a guidance counselor who does not have time, or they might not have like a trusting teacher or, family members. Once again, they're probably first generation. So just helping them explore what that can look like for them so that they can do something that they're able to, sustain a living wage for their families as they move forward. So pretty much really breaking that generational curse of poverty, breaking that cycle. The surest way out of poverty is education, right? And, just letting them know that it is attainable. It's definitely attainable. You might have to work a little hard for it. Not might. You will have to work a little hard for it. But it is attainable if you have the right knowledge and the right support, essentially.
What do you tell your students and those that you coach who are unsure of the major that they want? They may want to, one semester they may want to do nursing. Then they're like, well, I really don't want to do that, but I'm scared to try another major. What would you tell them?
It is okay to not know. Number one, we don't have to have everything figured out. I work with a lot of adults that don't have everything figured out. I don't even have everything figured out, right? So I just let them know, it's okay to not know. And you are at the time now where it's okay to explore it, right? When I was 17 and 18 in high school, I wasn't afforded all of the things that these students have now with apprenticeship program and internship programs and a mentor. No one told me the importance of a mentor, right? I have a mentor and I'm super grown, right? Big grown business owner. I'm a mom, but I still have a mentor. So even just telling them to seek out someone in the field, I pretty much know someone in every field. If I don't know them, I can find them. So just linking them up with someone who wants to do it. It's okay, you want to be a nurse? Let's talk about it. Because nurses do many things. I have a lot of nurse friends that work in many different nursing capacities. Let me link you with them. Have a conversation with them. Maybe you can shadow them, at some point, depending on what they do. So really just helping them explore it or get an internship, because they might have one day and they're like, ooh, I thought I wanted to be a nurse until I saw that blood and now I do not. So let's move on to something else. I do different assessments when I am able to do one-on-one, different assessments just to see where your strengths are. Because if you super suck at math and science and you want to be a nurse, we're going to have to talk about that. What can we do to strengthen those skills? Or if it's just super, super bad, let's explore something else. There's a lot of other different fields in the medical fields aside from nursing. It's usually just people's go-to because that's all they know. So really just having those in-depth conversations with them. I like my students to dream big. Nothing is too far-fetched. I always say, if you tell me you want to be an astronaut and you want to go to the moon, let's get it. How are we going to get there? What needs to happen to get from you being this high school student to getting up there in the sky, right? So never belittling them, never minimizing and shooting down their dreams. But whatever you want to do, let's talk about it.
How does your work look versus when you're working with a youth versus an adult? Because you mentioned that you also have adults that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
Do those two programs look the same, or how do you go about that?
So usually when it's the adults, it's not more so the one-on-one. It's usually the parents of the students. But then that brings on a lot of questions from the parents as well, because like I said, these are marginalized communities where the parents have no clue about anything, right? So Johnny can be coming to mom and saying like, oh, hey, I want to do this, or Miss Kissena and I talked about this, and now these are raising a lot of questions for the parents because this is foreign knowledge to them. So for the most part, the students have more knowledge than the parents. So I'm really only working with the students, but when I'm having these conversations with the adults or with the program directors or the counselors in, different agencies or schools that hire me to come in to do like these workshops, that's really the only time where I'm really having the conversations with the adults. But pretty much just having the reinforcement, right? Like, so if I'm in a high school or if I'm in a college working with first-year college students, usually the director, they hire me for a specific topic. I come in, I talk about that, but then that also gives them something to build on, right? So if we're talking about, for instance, time management and what that looks like, we have 24 hours in a day. What are you doing with your time? How can you delegate, time to do this and that when it comes to, your academic success? And then after that 90 minutes with me, then that leaves them with something to build on, whether it's the parent, like, okay, now remember Miss Kissena said, or you had that workshop, and kind of just layer it to keep moving forward. And then that's not like the only time that they hear about it.
I want to talk about your background. You're originally from New Jersey.
I am.
What made you decide to come to the Western New York area?
Well, it wasn't really a choice. I was still underage. I was 14 when we moved to Niagara Falls. So my parents are from this area. My mom's from Niagara Falls. My dad was from Buffalo. So Western New York was their home. My sister and I were both born in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and then we migrated back up this way when I was actually in high school. My grandma, who has passed on, she was getting older, and my mom had been away from home since she graduated high school. So she just wanted to come back and be closer to, closer to her mom, closer to family. So that's how we made our way back on up here. So it's been since '94. So Buffalo is home for me. I still go back to Jersey to visit, but I have no family in Jersey. Buffalo is home. All of my family is here in the city of Buffalo.
Talk about your experience going to school in the Niagara Falls School District. How was that for you?
It was really a shock for me because I transferred the second part of ninth grade, so right after Christmas break. So I actually started high school in Jersey, and I came here. Initially, I did not want to move, right? All of my friends groups, everything was there in Jersey. I really did not want to move, but of course, when your family moves, you have to. I really didn't have a choice. Going to the Niagara Falls School District for me was, well, first of all, the school was literally like a quarter size of my school in Jersey. My school in Jersey was like 4 of my Niagara Falls high schools in one. It was huge.
So the school you went to in the Falls was smaller.
So small, very small. I am a musician. I've been singing since I can talk. At that time, I played the clarinet also since the 5th grade. My band in Jersey literally was like a HBCU marching band. We did field shows. We had dancers. Coming here, to Niagara Falls, the band was much smaller. They never even got on the field. I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? So everything was just so different. High school did turn out to be a great experience because I've always been a people person. So meeting people, I have no problem doing that. I never have. It was just being separated from my friends. But once I got past that and it's like, okay, Kissena, you're here now, make the best of it. I had a couple of friends who were still friends to this day, one of which we literally talk almost every day. She's actually relocated. She's in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we've literally been friends since 9th grade. So I have been able to make some long-lasting relationships, but initially I was like, I do not want to be
I think that's like every child who moves
exactly.
to a different area, like,
right? Because you're the new girl,
yep.
right? So then you have to go through, and I went through all of those things, having to prove yourself. Maybe I like you, or maybe I don't, or it's just the awkwardness. But that was like so long ago, and it was way different. That was before social media. That was before, So it was definitely, it was an experience, but I would say it made me, who I am today, because I was like forced to be in a new atmosphere and I had to adapt. Just like I tell my students, they have to when they get on a college campus, right? College is different. It's new. Depends on if you go to a PWI or a HBCU, and it's just going to look different, but you have to adapt to your surroundings, and you have to get those tools that are in your toolbox that you've gotten from life or your mentor or your teachers, or if you've participated in some of my workshops, and pull those tools out of that toolbox and make it happen.
Let's talk about your experience in education, because you have 3 degrees.
Yes.
So what, an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's?
Yes.
Like the triple threat
And a
here.
certificate too.
And a certificate. So 4. So you are more than qualified to coach these students and to teach these students and to show them the way. Talk about your experience in higher education. What did you do before you started your company?
So before I started my company, I was working in the school building for a school-based preventive program, so working alongside of Erie County Child Protection, and I would work with students who were at risk from being removed from their home. So really my program was a last resort for these students. So it's either you work with this program or, we're going to have to talk about separating. So what that looked like was case management, making sure that the family had all they need, identifying goals with the family, seeing what they had going on. So whether if parents or guardians needed mental health, or if they had substance abuse problems or addiction and things like that. So I did that prior to going into higher education. I also worked for child protection, right? Really did not like working for child protection. It was then, coming out of undergrad, I thought that's what I wanted to do. I want to save the world. I want to make sure that, these kids are safe. But when you're on the other side, you realize that there's a lot of politics around a lot of different things. And I cannot work or be a part of something where my mission and values don't align with the work that I'm doing. So I am seeing, when we talk about generational curses, right, I'm seeing generation after generation after generation have the same issues. I'm looking at cases where this is a teen parent, but her mom was also going through domestic violence, and the grandma was also going through domestic violence. So now we're on generation number 4. They're all going through domestic violence. What is happening here? Like, why is this continual? What is someone doing or not doing to break this generational curse? For me, I always wanted to be the person, we know the problem, but what is the solution? I don't want to put a Band-Aid over it, right? I want to give you a solution to change that, right? I don't want this to be a continual problem. So that was one reason why I just could not do that, because it really was put a Band-Aid over it, move it on. That's just not something I could subscribe to. I've worked in adoption. I've worked in foster care. I've worked with parenting teams at an organization here, literally up until like a couple months ago. Did that for 9 years just to help these teens be better moms, teach them that, if you're not okay, your baby would never be okay, right? What does that look like? What do you need to do to, make yourself okay for this child? Because once again, we're, breaking barriers, breaking those generational curses. And now I'm working in higher ed for a pre-collegiate program, aside from doing Akcess Granted. So I have been working with children and families so long, well over a decade at this point. But that is my passion. I always say college access is my jam. I've coined myself as a college access champion because I am going to rah-rah for you to, be able to do, like I said, whatever it is you want to do, because everyone should have equitable access to college education, right? It's not fair that some people have more leverage than others just because of their background or where they come from. And part of my mission for Akcess Granted is a student zip code, race, or parental status should not affect, where you can go in regards to your education. And it's okay to be first. I tell my students that all the time. It's okay to be first. I was first, and here I am.
I want to talk about that, the first generation, but before you mention something, you just said it, that everyone should have access to education.
Absolutely.
And though your focus, part of Akcess Granted, your focus is Black and brown youth, it's not limited to that.
Correct.
It's for everyone. Talk about that more.
Absolutely. Yeah, so when I always say that, I do have some people. I did another interview before, and people can be closed-minded. I say a lot, but we all know that people can pick out what they want to hear. So I do say yes, Black and brown, but statistically, Black and brown students are the ones who are getting left behind, right? When you look at the data. I do serve underrepresented and marginalized populations. That's not always Black and brown students. I serve all students, right? I'm not just like, oh, I'm just here for, but do I enjoy serving my students that look like me? Absolutely, because I know that those students really are the ones that are falling between the cracks, right? I've worked with a 6th grader who was barely reading on a 1st grade level. Those students are the ones that are falling between the cracks. A lot of times people that don't look like me have an advantage just because of what they look like. They can also be poor, they can also live in a low income, but they are also going to still have that privilege because they are not a Black and brown person. So I always want to just make it clear that I do work with all students, not just Black and brown students, because some people I've had, like I said, I've had someone like, oh, well, she just, it's like, no, I work with all the students.
Everyone.
I work with everyone, yes. But when we're talking about that underserved, when we're talking about those marginalized populations, it does look different for them. They navigate education different. They navigate higher ed different. They navigate life different, right? I always tell my students about Brown versus Board of Education. This education system was never created for Black and brown students. And even now in 2023, just so many different things that are coming back. It's kind of like everything is just being overturned, and affirmative action in higher ed, and people are still discriminated against. But it's not, the people that don't look like me, right? It's those Black and brown students. So, yeah, I'm definitely a huge advocate for them. I am not going to sugarcoat anything. If you're wrong, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. I'm not going to be your yes person. I'm going to critique you. I'm going to give you suggestions. Like, I am the mom. I'm the mom figure. But they appreciate that, because this generation, as much as they fight it, they long for structure. They long for someone who is really like in their corner no matter what, whether they have behaviors or what. Like, I don't get offended. Everyone's entitled to a bad day. I demand respect. I don't tolerate disrespect at all. You don't have to like me, but you will respect me. So even with my students that I work with on a regular basis, they know, like, Miss Kissena, I will have fun with you. I will do TikToks with you. We will sing.
Yes, TikToks.
Yes. I'm not that great at it, but, I'll do it. We will sing, dance, laugh, and play. But when it's time to get down to business, I'm about business. And if they have a little attitude, they go, that's fine, no hard feelings. Next time I see you, hey, girl, give me a hug. It's all love. So they definitely respect the genuineness and just taking the time to just actually sit with them. I've had students like, I've never had anyone that cared enough to even sit and ask me, what do I want to do, let alone go as far as, you and I have gone. So.
And that'll do it for Producers Picks. We would like to thank our guests, Francesca Mesiah, Dior Lindsey, and Kissena Frazier. If you missed anything or you'd like to hear it again, you can get this program as a podcast wherever you get your podcast or on the Amplify BTPM app. Each episode is also online at wbfo.org. I'm Dallas Taylor. Thanks for listening.